What would you do if you came home early and found your pregnant wife crying on the floor? Covered in bruises, she refused to explain. Michael Whitman was a millionaire.
Disrespect this
He had
family.
everything.
That teacup
The
was
mansion,
an heirloom.
the success,
I'm sorry.
the
It
beautiful
was an
wife
accident.
carrying his first child. But when he checked his security cameras that night, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. The person hurting his wife was
Stop
not
the
a stranger.
proceedings.
It was not an enemy. It was someone he had trusted his entire life.
This evidence confirms
Someone he
her
had
innocence.
loved unconditionally since the day he was
Hold
born.
still, ma'am.
His own mother. But here is
Let go
where the
of me.
story takes a turn
Michael,
no one saw coming.
How could you do this?
Because Eleanor Whitman was not just a cruel mother-in-law. She was hiding secrets that went back decades. Secrets involving murder. Secrets involving millions of dollars. And secrets about Lisa's past that would change everything Michael thought he knew about the woman he married. What happens next will shock you. It will break your heart. And the ending, I promise you will never see it coming. This is the full story. Stay with me until the end, because the biggest twist happens in the final 10 minutes. The Whitman estate rose from the Virginia countryside like a monument to success. Its 12,000 square feet of Georgian architecture sprawling across meticulously landscaped grounds that had been featured in 3 different home design magazines. The mansion sat at the end of a quarter-mile private driveway, shaded by oak trees that had witnessed generations of wealth and privilege pass beneath their branches. Marble columns framed the entrance. Crystal chandeliers glittered behind tall windows. And surrounding everything was the kind of profound silence that only extraordinary wealth could purchase. Michael Whitman drove his Tesla up that long driveway on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. At 38 years old, Michael had achieved the kind of success that most people only dreamed about. He had built his technology company from nothing, starting in his college apartment with a laptop and a vision, growing it over 15 years into a billion-dollar empire that employed over 2,000 people. He worked 80-hour weeks. He traveled constantly. He attended board meetings and investor calls and industry conferences, always moving, always building, always reaching for the next milestone. But 6 months ago, something had shifted inside him. His wife, Lisa, had announced her pregnancy, and suddenly all those milestones seemed less important than the tiny heartbeat he had heard during their first ultrasound appointment. He wanted to be present. He wanted to be the kind of father his own dad had never gotten the chance to be. Today was supposed to be a step in that direction. His afternoon client meeting had been canceled at the last minute, and instead of filling the time with more work, Michael had made an impulsive decision. He would surprise Lisa with flowers and an early dinner. He would hold her close and feel their baby kick against his palm. He would remind her that despite his demanding schedule, she was still the center of his universe. The front gate opened automatically as his car approached. 2 gardeners were trimming the hedges near the marble fountain that anchored the circular driveway. One of them looked up and waved. Michael waved back, noting absently that the man's smile seemed strained somehow, forced. He parked in front of the main entrance and stepped out of the car, breathing in the familiar scent of freshly cut grass and blooming roses. Everything looked perfect. The windows sparkled in the afternoon sun. The lawn was immaculately green. Not a single leaf was out of place. But when Michael reached the front door, he found it unlocked. That was strange. Lisa was careful about security, especially since the pregnancy had made her more cautious about everything. She triple-checked the locks before bed. She set the alarm system religiously. She never left doors unlocked when she was home alone. Michael pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. Italian marble stretched beneath his feet, polished to a mirror shine. The grand staircase curved upward to his right, its mahogany banister gleaming in the light from the chandelier overhead. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the silence. The house felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Michael set his briefcase down on the marble floor and loosened his tie, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over him. He listened for the sounds that usually filled his house when Lisa was home. Music drifting from the kitchen, where she liked to cook while listening to Passage. The television playing one of her cooking shows or home renovation programs. Her voice humming some song she had heard on the radio. Nothing, just the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the distant hum of the central air conditioning system. Michael walked deeper into the house, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. "Lisa?" He called out, "Honey, I'm home early." No response. He checked the kitchen first. Empty. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the counter, long since gone cold. A pregnancy book lay open on the table, its pages marked with colorful sticky notes. Everything suggested that Lisa had been here recently, but there was no sign of her now. Michael's unease deepened into something closer to fear. He pulled out his phone and called her number. Somewhere upstairs, he heard the faint sound of a ringtone. She was in the house. So why was she not answering? He climbed the grand staircase 2 steps at a time, following the sound of the ringtone. It led him down the east wing hallway, past the master bedroom, toward the room at the end of the corridor. The nursery. They had spent weeks preparing this room, painting the walls a soft sage green, assembling furniture from catalogs Lisa had dog-eared and highlighted, hanging mobiles and arranging stuffed animals, and debating the merits of different rocking chairs. It was supposed to be a sanctuary for their child, a place of safety and love and new beginnings. But as Michael pushed open the nursery door, he found something else entirely. Lisa sat on the floor beside the half-built crib, her back pressed against the wall, her knees drawn up as far as her pregnant belly would allow. Her hands were trembling. Her mascara had carved dark rivers down her cheeks. She looked small somehow, smaller than she had ever looked before, like something had crushed the light right out of her. Michael's heart clenched at the sight of her, but it was the bruise on her jaw that made his blood run cold. Fresh, purple, unmistakably the shape of fingers. Lisa looked up at the sound of the door and immediately began wiping at her face, forcing her lips into something that was supposed to resemble a smile. "Hey," she said, her voice cracking despite her obvious effort to sound normal. "You are home early. I was checking on the crib and I tripped over one of the boxes. Clumsy pregnant lady, you know how it is." She laughed, but the sound was hollow, like glass breaking against stone. Michael crossed the room in 3 quick strides and knelt beside her. His eyes moved from her face to her arms, where her cardigan sleeves had ridden up slightly. More bruises there, finger-shaped. The kind of marks that came from someone grabbing hard enough to leave impressions in the skin. "Lisa," he said quietly, reaching for her hands. "Tell me the truth." She pulled her hands away, tucking them into her sleeves, hiding the evidence. "It is nothing," she said, still forcing that terrible fake smile. "Really, I am just tired. The pregnancy makes me clumsy and emotional. You know how hormones are." Michael did not know how hormones were. What he knew was that his wife was sitting on the floor of their unborn child's nursery, covered in bruises, crying her eyes out, and lying to him about what had happened. "Who did this to you?" Lisa's smile faltered. Her eyes darted away, looking at anything except his face. "No one. I told you, I fell. I tripped over a box." "Lisa, look at me." She did not look at him. "Please," she whispered. "Just drop it, please." The desperation in her voice stopped Michael from pushing further. Whatever had happened, whoever had hurt her, she was terrified. Not just sad or embarrassed, but genuinely afraid. Pushing her now would only make her retreat further into herself. So instead of demanding answers, Michael did something he rarely did. He sat down beside her on the floor of the nursery, leaned against the wall, and pulled her gently against his chest. Lisa resisted for a moment, her body rigid with tension. Then something inside her broke, and she collapsed against him, sobbing so hard that her whole body shook. Michael held her while she cried. He stroked her hair and whispered that everything would be okay, even though he had no idea if that was true. He felt their baby kick against his side, a reminder that whatever was happening, there were now 3 lives tangled up in this mess. When Lisa's sobs finally subsided into hiccups and shaky breaths, Michael spoke again. "Let me take you to bed. You need to rest." Lisa nodded weakly, too exhausted to argue. Michael helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist as she swayed slightly. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned to be afraid of sudden movements. As they walked down the hallway toward the master bedroom, Michael's eyes drifted to the corner of the ceiling. A small black security camera sat there, its tiny red recording light blinking steadily. He had installed 47 cameras throughout the house 3 years ago, after a string of burglaries in the neighborhood had rattled the wealthy residents of their gated community. He checked the footage occasionally, mostly out of habit, mostly finding nothing more interesting than the housekeepers going about their work or the gardeners trimming the hedges. But now, as he watched his wife lower herself onto their bed with a wince of pain she tried desperately to hide, Michael realized that those cameras might hold the answers she was too afraid to give him. He pulled the covers over Lisa and kissed her forehead. "Rest," he said softly. "I will bring you some tea later." Lisa's eyes were already closing, exhaustion and pregnancy pulling her towards sleep. "I love you," she murmured. "I love you too. More than anything." He watched her for a moment, this woman he had married, this woman who was carrying his child, this woman who was clearly suffering and refusing to tell him why. Then he slipped quietly out of the room and made his way to his home office on the other side of the house. The security system hummed quietly in the corner of the room, its multiple screens dark but ready. Michael sat down at his desk, typed in his password with trembling fingers, and began to scroll through the footage from the past week. The first few days showed nothing unusual. The housekeeping staff going about their work, vacuuming carpets and polishing silver. The gardener trimming the roses in the back garden. Lisa moving through the house, making tea in the kitchen, reading books about pregnancy in the sunroom, talking on the phone with her friends from nursing school. Then he reached the footage from 3 days ago, 2:47 in the afternoon. A silver Mercedes pulled up the driveway. Michael leaned closer to the screen, his heart rate accelerating, even though he already knew who owned that car. He watched as the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. Eleanor Whitman, his mother, 64 years old, widow of a state senator, the product of old Virginia money married to new tech wealth. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a cream-colored suit and pearls that had been in the family for generations. She walked like she owned every room she entered, because for most of her life, she had. Michael watched as Eleanor used her own key to enter the house. He watched as she found Lisa in the kitchen making tea. At first, the interaction looked perfectly normal. Pleasant, even. The two women smiled at each other and exchanged what appeared to be casual small talk. Eleanor accepted a cup of tea and sat down at the kitchen island. Then around the 3-minute mark, Eleanor's posture changed. Her chin lifted, her shoulders squared, her finger extended and pointed at Lisa like a weapon. Even though the security cameras had no audio, Michael could read the cruelty spreading across his mother's face like a stain. He had seen that expression before, many times, usually directed at people she considered beneath her. Servants who had made mistakes, business associates who had disappointed her, anyone who failed to meet her exacting standards. But never at Lisa, never at his wife. On the screen, Lisa backed away from the counter, her hand moving instinctively to her pregnant belly. Eleanor followed, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. Her finger jabbed at Lisa's chest. Her mouth moved rapidly, spitting words that Michael could not hear, but could easily imagine. Then Eleanor grabbed Lisa's arm and yanked her forward. Hard. Lisa stumbled, nearly falling, catching herself on the edge of the kitchen counter. The teacup in her other hand slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tile floor, sending ceramic shards and brown liquid spraying across the immaculate white surface. Eleanor did not stop. She shoved Lisa backward with both hands, sending her crashing against the counter hard enough to make the younger woman cry out in pain. Lisa bent over, one arm wrapped protectively around her belly, her face twisted in agony and fear. And Eleanor stood over her, watching, satisfied. Michael slammed his hand on the desk so hard that pain shot through his palm. He rewound the footage and watched it again. Then again. Each viewing made it worse. Each viewing revealed new details he had missed the first time. The way Lisa flinched before Eleanor even touched her, as if she was expecting the violence. The way she apologized even though she had done nothing wrong. The way she stayed silent, taking the abuse without fighting back, without calling for help. This was not a one-time incident. This was a pattern. Michael kept scrolling through the footage. Day after day, his mother appeared at the house. Day after day, the abuse continued. Verbal attacks that left Lisa in tears. Physical shoves that left bruises on her arms and back. Cruel words delivered with a smile that never reached Eleanor's cold, calculating eyes. And Lisa never said a word. Not to him, not to anyone. She suffered in silence, hiding the evidence, pretending everything was fine. Protecting his mother from consequences. Michael sat back in his chair, staring at the frozen image on his screen. His mother's hand wrapped around Lisa's arm, his wife's face contorted in pain, his unborn child in danger from the woman who was supposed to protect them. He reached for his phone, ready to call Eleanor and demand an explanation, ready to scream at her, to threaten her, to make her pay for every bruise and every tear. But something stopped him. He knew his mother too well. She would deny everything. She would cry and play the victim. She would twist the story until Michael was the one apologizing, until he was doubting what he had seen with his own eyes. She had been manipulating people her entire life. She would not stop now, no. He needed to be smarter than that. He needed evidence she could not dismiss. He needed a plan. Michael turned off the security monitor and sat in the darkness of his office for a long time, his mind racing through possibilities. His mother had hurt his wife, had threatened his child, had violated the sanctity of his home in the most fundamental way possible, and she would pay for it. He just needed to figure out how. Michael did not sleep that night. While Lisa tossed and turned in their bed, trapped in nightmares she would not name, he sat in his home office and watched footage, hour after hour of it, week after week. He documented every incident of abuse with the precision of a man building a legal case, because that was exactly what he was doing. By the time dawn light began creeping through the window blinds, he had compiled a comprehensive timeline of horrors. Eleanor visited the house an average of 3 times per week. She always came in the afternoon, always when Michael was at work, always when Lisa was alone with only the household staff for company. The staff, Michael noted grimly, who had clearly been intimidated into silence. The visits followed a predictable pattern: pleasant conversation for the first 5 or 10 minutes, long enough for any casual observer to believe that everything was normal. Then the shift would come. Eleanor's voice would sharpen, her posture would change, and the attacks would begin. Sometimes the abuse was purely verbal. Eleanor calling Lisa white trash, accusing her of trapping Michael with a pregnancy, threatening to destroy her reputation, her marriage, her sanity, telling her that she would never be a real Whitman, that she did not deserve the Whitman name, that she was nothing more than a gold-digging opportunist who had fooled Michael into marrying her. Other times, the abuse turned physical. Shoves, slaps, grabbing and yanking hard enough to leave the bruises Michael had seen on his wife's body. Nothing severe enough to require medical attention, nothing that would leave permanent marks, but enough to keep Lisa in a constant state of fear. The most disturbing footage came from 5 days ago. Eleanor stood in the doorway of the nursery, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking to someone Michael could not identify. She was smiling, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered her prey. Michael wished desperately that his cameras had audio. He needed to know what she was saying, what she was planning, who she was talking to. But the security system he had installed 3 years ago only recorded video, a cost-cutting measure that he now regretted deeply. He found a partial answer in the next day's footage. Eleanor was back in the kitchen with Lisa, who looked pale and exhausted, dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. Eleanor was pointing at Lisa's pregnant belly, her face twisted with disgust. Michael watched his mother's lips move, forming words he could not hear but could imagine. Then Eleanor said something that made Lisa crumple. Whatever those words were, they broke something inside his wife. Lisa slid down the wall and sat on the kitchen floor, her hands covering her face, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She looked utterly defeated, utterly alone. And Eleanor stood over her, watching with satisfaction, before turning on her heel and walking out of the house without a backward glance. Michael closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes. He had the evidence he needed: video proof of his mother's abuse, documentation of a pattern of behavior that any court would find damning. But he also knew that Eleanor was dangerous in ways that went far beyond physical violence. She had connections throughout Virginia's legal and political establishment. She had spent decades cultivating relationships with judges, lawyers, doctors, and politicians. If Michael confronted her directly, she would find a way to spin the story. She would make herself the victim. She would destroy Lisa's credibility, and perhaps Lisa herself. No, he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with before he made any moves. And for that, he needed Lisa to trust him enough to tell the truth. He found her in the garden later that morning, sitting on the stone bench where he had proposed to her 2 years ago. The roses were in full bloom around her, their fragrance sweet in the warm spring air. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling their baby move, her eyes staring at nothing. Michael sat down beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths and unasked questions. Finally, Michael broke it. "I saw the cameras, Lisa. I saw everything." She did not move, did not look at him, but her whole body went rigid, tension radiating from her like heat from a fire. "How much?" she whispered. "Enough, more than enough. I saw what she has been doing to you. For weeks, maybe months. I saw her hit you. I saw her threaten you. I saw her treat you like garbage in our own home." Lisa's shoulders began to shake. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another, then a flood that she could no longer contain. When she finally turned to face him, her eyes were red, swollen, filled with a fear that broke his heart. "Why?" he asked gently. "Why did you not tell me?" Lisa looked down at her hands, at the faded bruises on her wrists that she had been hiding with long sleeves for weeks. She said, "If I told you, she would destroy me. She has connections, Michael, judges, doctors, lawyers, people who owe her favors, people who will do whatever she asks. She said she would make me look crazy. She said she would have me committed to a psychiatric hospital and take the baby away from me." Michael felt ice spread through his chest. "Take the baby?" Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She has been planning it for months. She called it a contingency plan. If I ever tried to tell you what was happening, if I ever threatened to go public, she would have me declared mentally unfit. She said she knows doctors who will diagnose whatever she tells them to diagnose. She said she has had people committed before, and no one ever believed their stories once they were labeled as crazy." Michael reached for Lisa's hands, holding them tightly in his own. "Lisa," he said carefully, "why did you not tell me anyway? Did you really think I would believe her over you?" Lisa's face crumpled. "I did not know what to think. You work so much. You are always busy, always traveling, always focused on the company. And your mother, she is so powerful. Everyone respects her. Everyone believes her. She has this way of making herself look like the victim no matter what she does." Lisa pulled one hand free to wipe at her eyes. "I thought maybe you would believe her too. I thought maybe you would look at me differently if you knew the things she said about me. If you knew where I came from." Michael frowned. "Where you came from? What does that mean?" Lisa was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "There are things I never told you about my past, things I was ashamed of, things I thought you would never need to know." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I grew up in foster care. You knew that. But I never told you why I was in foster care or what happened to me there." Michael waited, giving her space to continue. "My parents died when I was young. Car accident. I was 7 years old. After that, I bounced around from home to home. Some of them were okay, some of them were not. When I was 15, I ended up with a family called the Hendersons. They seemed nice at first. Pillars of the community, church deacons, everyone loved them." Her voice broke. "But he, the father, he was not nice. Not to me. Not when we were alone." Michael's stomach turned. He started coming to my room at night, touching me, hurting me. I did not know what to do. I was 15 years old and completely alone, and he told me that if I ever said anything, no one would believe me. He was a respected man. I was just another troubled foster kid. Tears were streaming freely down Lisa's face now. Eventually, I could not take it anymore. I told a teacher at school what was happening. She called the authorities. There was an investigation. Lisa laughed bitterly. But he was a deacon, and I was a foster kid with behavioral problems, and they decided that I was making it up for attention. They said I was disturbed. They said I was dangerous. They put me in a place called Glenwood Youth Psychiatric Center, and they told me I would stay there until I admitted that I had lied. Michael felt sick. "How long were you there?" 3 years, from age 15 to age 18. When I turned 18, they had to let me go. But by then, I had nowhere to go. No family, no money, no education, just a psychiatric record that would follow me for the rest of my life. She showed him her wrists, turning them over to reveal scars he had somehow never noticed before. Old, faded, but still visible if you knew where to look. I tried to end it twice, she said quietly. Not because I was crazy, Michael. Because I was alone and no one would help me, and I thought dying was the only way to make the pain stop. Michael pulled her into his arms and held her tight. When I got out, Lisa continued, her voice muffled against his chest. I swore I would never be a victim again. I worked 3 jobs, put myself through community college, then nursing school. I became a nurse because I wanted to help kids like me, kids who had no one fighting for them. Me. She pulled back and looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. I did not tell you because I was ashamed, because I thought if you knew where I came from, you would see me differently. You would think I was damaged, broken. Michael held her face in his hands. I see you, Lisa. I see exactly who you are. Not a damaged person, not a broken person, a survivor, the strongest person I have ever known. Lisa sobbed. Your mother found out about Glenwood. I do not know how, but she found the records. She has been using them against me for months, threatening to make them public, threatening to tell the world that I am unstable, that I tried to kill myself, that I am a danger to our child. And you believed her, Lisa nodded miserably. I have spent my whole life being told I am not good enough, being told no one will ever believe me. Your mother is very convincing, Michael. She made me feel like everything I had built, my career, my marriage, my future, all of it could be taken away in an instant if I did not do exactly what she wanted. Michael's jaw tightened. What exactly does she want? Lisa looked at him for a long moment before answering. She wants the baby. She has made that clear from the beginning. She does not think I am fit to raise a Whitman child. She wants me out of the picture, one way or another. The baby kicked against Michael's hand where it rested on Lisa's belly. Their child, completely innocent, completely unaware of the danger surrounding them. Michael made a decision. Listen to me, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Whatever my mother has planned, it is not going to happen. You are not going anywhere. Our baby is not going anywhere, and I am going to make sure that she never threatens you again. Lisa shook her head. You do not understand how powerful she is. She has been doing this her whole life, manipulating people, destroying anyone who gets in her way. She always wins, Michael, always. Not this time. Lisa looked at him with desperate hope. How? How do you fight someone like that? Michael stood up and offered her his hand. We start by getting help, real help, from someone who knows how to handle people like my mother. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had not called in years. Derek Shaw speaking. Derek, it is Michael Whitman. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Michael Whitman, the guy who disappeared into his billion-dollar company and forgot all his college friends existed. What could you possibly need from me? Despite everything, Michael almost smiled. Derek had always been direct. It was one of the things Michael had liked about him during their years as roommates at Georgetown. My wife is being abused, Michael said, by my mother. I have evidence, but I need someone who knows how to use it. Someone who is not afraid to go up against powerful people. Another pause. Longer this time. Your mother, Eleanor Whitman, the senator's widow, the woman who has half the Virginia legal establishment in her pocket. Yes, Derek exhaled slowly. That is one hell of a case, Michael. You realize what you are asking? Taking on your own mother in court? I am asking you to help me protect my wife and my unborn child. I am asking you to help me stop a monster. Silence stretched across the line. Tell me everything, Derek said finally. Start from the beginning, and do not leave anything out. 3 days passed, 3 days of careful preparation, strategic planning, and elaborate pretense. On the surface, nothing had changed. Lisa continued her daily routine, moving through the house as she always had. She made breakfast in the kitchen. She read her pregnancy books in the sunroom. She smiled politely at the housekeepers and gardeners who had watched her suffering in silence for months. And when Eleanor's silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway on Tuesday afternoon, Lisa opened the door with the same nervous deference she had always shown. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Michael had spent 72 hours preparing for this moment. He had upgraded every security camera in the house to models that recorded crystal clear audio. He had hidden microphones in strategic locations throughout the first floor. He had consulted with Derek about Virginia's recording laws and confirmed that, as a one-party consent state, any recordings Lisa made of her own conversations were admissible in court. Derek had arrived at the house the night before with a legal team of 3 associates and boxes of documents. They had reviewed the existing footage, planned contingencies, and prepared for every scenario they could imagine. Now, on Tuesday morning, Michael pretended to leave for work. He made a show of kissing Lisa goodbye, of grabbing his briefcase, of pulling his car out of the garage and down the driveway. The staff saw him go. The gardeners waved as he passed, but instead of driving to his office, Michael turned the corner at the end of the street and parked his car under the shade of an ancient oak tree. He pulled out his tablet, logged into the security system, and watched every camera in his house come alive on the screen. Now they waited. At 2:17 in the afternoon, the silver Mercedes appeared. Michael watched as Eleanor stepped out of her car, adjusted her pearls, and walked to the front door with the confident stride of a woman who had never been told no. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a cream-colored dress and a cashmere cardigan that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a society matron arriving for a charity luncheon. She looked like a woman who was completely in control. Lisa opened the door. Her face was calm, pleasant, revealing nothing of the terror she must have been feeling. "Eleanor," she said, "I did not expect you today." Eleanor swept past her without waiting for an invitation. "I called ahead, dear. Did you not get my message? I must have missed it. Would you like some tea? Tea would be lovely, and perhaps we can have a little conversation about the future." Eleanor settled onto the living room sofa, crossing her legs with the practiced elegance of someone who had spent a lifetime performing for society. Lisa disappeared into the kitchen to prepare the tea, her hands trembling slightly as she filled the kettle. In his car, Michael leaned closer to his tablet. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady on the screen. When Lisa returned with the tea tray, Eleanor accepted her cup with a gracious smile that did not reach her eyes. "You know," Eleanor said, stirring her tea with a silver spoon, "I have been thinking quite a bit about what happens after the baby is born, about arrangements." Lisa set down the teapot carefully. "Arrangements?" Eleanor's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it, only calculation. "Surely you have thought about it, dear. You will need help, of course. A new mother always does, especially one with your, how shall I put this, particular background. I am not sure what you mean." Eleanor set down her teacup and leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Lisa like a snake watching a mouse. "Oh, come now. Let us not play games. We both know the truth about what you are, where you came from, what you did." Lisa's face went pale. "Eleanor." Eleanor held up a hand, silencing her. "I have been patient with you, Lisa. More patient than you deserve. I have given you chance after chance to prove yourself worthy of my son, worthy of the Whitman name. And you have failed, repeatedly. That is not fair." "Fair?" Eleanor laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Nothing about this situation is fair. My son, my brilliant, successful son, trapped into marriage by a manipulative little gold digger who saw an opportunity and seized it. I love Michael. I would never." Eleanor stood and walked toward Lisa, each step deliberate, predatory. "Love. How charming. You think love is enough? Love does not teach a child which fork to use at dinner. Love does not get them into the right schools, the right clubs, the right social circles. You came from nothing, Lisa. You are nothing, and I will not allow my grandchild to be raised by nothing." Lisa backed away, her hand moving instinctively to her pregnant belly. "What are you saying?" Eleanor stopped directly in front of her, close enough that Lisa could smell her expensive perfume. "I am saying that you need to start thinking about what is best for this child. Not what is best for you. And what is best for this child is growing up in a proper home, with proper guidance, proper values, proper connections." She reached out and touched Lisa's belly, a gesture that might have looked tender to an outside observer, but felt like a threat. "My guidance," Eleanor continued, "my values, my connections." Lisa's voice trembled. "You want to take my baby?" Eleanor's smile was triumphant. I want to give my grandchild the life it deserves, a life you cannot provide. And if you are smart, you will cooperate. You will sign the papers when the time comes. You will step aside gracefully. You will disappear from Michael's life and let me raise this child the way it should be raised. And if I refuse, Eleanor moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Then I will destroy you. She began to circle Lisa like a shark circling wounded prey. I have friends in very high places, Lisa. Doctors who will diagnose whatever I tell them to diagnose. Judges who will sign whatever orders I put in front of them. All it takes is one phone call, and you will find yourself in a psychiatric facility, just like when you were 15. Only this time, you will not get out when you turn 18. Lisa's whole body was shaking now. You cannot do that. You cannot just have someone committed. Cannot I? Eleanor laughed. You sweet, naive girl. I have done it before. There was a woman years ago who tried to cause trouble for my husband. She ended up in a facility in West Virginia. No one ever heard from her again. She stopped directly in front of Lisa, her face inches away. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to cooperate. You are going to pal and nod and do exactly what I tell you to do. And when the baby is born, you are going to sign custody over to me and walk away without a fight. Lisa's tears were flowing freely now. Please, I am begging you, do not do this. Eleanor reached out and wiped a tear from Lisa's cheek with one manicured finger. The begging is beneath you, dear, though I do enjoy it. She turned and walked toward the door, picking up her purse from the table where she had left it. You have until the baby is born to make your decision. Cooperate, and I will make sure you are comfortable. Fight me, and I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. She paused at the door and looked back with a smile. Think about it carefully, Lisa, because this is not a threat. It is a promise. The door closed behind her. The sound of her heels faded down the front steps. A moment later, the Mercedes engine purred to life and pulled away down the driveway. Lisa stood alone in the living room, her hands pressed against her belly, tears streaming down her face. But this time, she was not alone. Not really. In his car, Michael stopped the recording and saved the file. His hands were shaking with rage, but his mind was perfectly clear. He had everything he needed. His mother had confessed to a plan to have Lisa committed and steal custody of their child. She had admitted to having someone else committed in the past. She had threatened, intimidated, and terrorized a pregnant woman in vivid, explicit detail. And every single word had been captured in high-definition audio and video. Michael started his car and drove back to the house. When he walked through the front door, Lisa ran into his arms and collapsed against his chest, sobbing. I got it all, he said, holding her tight. Every word, every threat. She cannot deny any of it now. Lisa looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. She is going to fight back, she whispered. She meant what she said. She will do anything to win. I know, but now we have proof. Real proof. Evidence that even her connections cannot explain away. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. She is not going to take our baby, Lisa. She is not going to hurt you ever again. I promise you that. Lisa shook her head. You do not know her like I do. She does not lose. She never loses. Michael's jaw tightened. There is a first time for everything. The blow came 3 days later when they least expected it. Lisa woke at 7 in the morning to an empty bed and a note on Michael's pillow. Emergency board meeting, it read in his familiar handwriting. Back by noon. Love you. She did not think anything of it. Michael's work often demanded unexpected meetings, especially with everything that had been happening lately. She stretched, showered, and made her way downstairs to start her day. The doorbell rang at 9:15. Lisa opened the door expecting a delivery driver or perhaps one of the neighbors. Instead, she found 2 police officers flanking a severe-looking woman in a gray suit who held a clipboard pressed against her chest like a weapon. Mrs. Whitman, the woman said. Her voice was flat, professional, devoid of warmth. I am Dr. Patricia Vance from Adult Protective Services. We have received a concerning report about your welfare and need to conduct an evaluation. Lisa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What? There must be some mistake. I am fine. Dr. Vance did not smile. Ma'am, the report came from a licensed medical professional. It details erratic behavior, self-inflicted injuries, and potential danger to your unborn child. Lisa's heart stopped. This was Eleanor's doing. It had to be. I have not hurt myself, Lisa said, her voice rising. I have not done anything wrong. Dr. Vance made a note on her clipboard. The bruises on your arms and face suggest otherwise, Mrs. Whitman. Our information indicates these injuries may be self-inflicted as part of a larger pattern of unstable behavior. They are not self-inflicted. My mother-in-law, Lisa stopped herself, realizing too late how that would sound. Dr. Vance raised an eyebrow. Your mother-in-law? Are you suggesting that Eleanor Whitman has been physically assaulting you? Yes, we have proof, recordings. Dr. Vance made another note. Mrs. Whitman blaming family members for self-inflicted injuries is a common pattern we see in cases like this. I'm going to need you to come with us for a more thorough evaluation. Lisa backed away from the door. You cannot do this. I have not done anything wrong. I am 7 months pregnant, which is exactly why we need to ensure the baby's safety, Dr. Vance replied. We can do this voluntarily, which I would recommend, or we can seek a court order. The choice is yours. Lisa looked at the police officers. Their faces were impassive, but their hands rested on their belts, close to their weapons. She looked at Dr. Vance, whose cold eyes held not a trace of sympathy or doubt. She thought about calling Michael, but her phone was upstairs and these people were already inside her home. She thought about running, but where would she go? She was 7 months pregnant and had no car keys, no money, no identification. She was trapped. Let me at least get my phone, Lisa said, her voice shaking. Let me call my husband. Dr. Vance shook her head. I am afraid that is not possible, Mrs. Whitman. Until we complete our evaluation, you will not have access to personal devices or outside communication. It is standard procedure. For 2 hours, Lisa sat in her own living room while Dr. Vance asked questions designed to make her sound insane. Do you ever feel like people are watching you? Have you had thoughts of harming yourself or your baby? Do you believe someone is trying to hurt you? Lisa tried to answer carefully, but every response seemed wrong. If she said she did not feel watched, it contradicted her claims about the security cameras and recordings. If she said she did feel watched, she sounded paranoid. If she denied that anyone was trying to hurt her, it negated everything she had told them about Eleanor. If she admitted she felt threatened, it confirmed their suspicions about her mental state. It was a trap. Every question, every response, every moment of this evaluation was designed to paint her as unstable. Mrs. Whitman, Dr. Vance said finally, closing her clipboard with a definitive snap. Based on my preliminary assessment, I am recommending a 72-hour observation hold at Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. This is for your own safety and the safety of your unborn child. Lisa felt the room spin. You cannot do this. I have rights. I want to call my lawyer. You can contact legal representation from the facility, Dr. Vance said, standing. The officers will escort you to the vehicle. I suggest you cooperate. Lisa wanted to scream, wanted to fight, wanted to run, but she looked down at her pregnant belly, felt her baby kick against her palm, and knew that any resistance would only make things worse. They were looking for proof that she was unstable. Screaming and fighting would give them exactly what they wanted. So she stood quietly. She walked with the officers to the waiting vehicle. She sat in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap and her heart breaking in her chest. And as they drove away from her home, from her life, from everything she had fought so hard to build, Lisa understood something with terrible clarity. Eleanor had made the first move, and Lisa was losing. Riverside Psychiatric Hospital was a sprawling complex of brick buildings on the outskirts of Richmond. It looked pleasant enough from the outside, with green lawns and flowering shrubs and signs pointing visitors toward various wings and departments. But inside, it was a prison. Lisa was processed like a criminal. Her personal belongings were confiscated. Her clothes were replaced with hospital scrubs. Her wedding ring was locked in a safe, along with her watch and earrings and every other connection to her former life. They put her in a small room with white walls, a narrow bed with restraints attached to the frame, and a window too high to see through. The door locked from the outside. A nurse came in with a small paper cup containing 2 pills. Doctor's orders, the nurse said. For your anxiety. Lisa looked at the pills. I am pregnant. I am not taking anything without knowing what it is. The nurse sighed. It is just a mild sedative. It will help you rest. I do not want to rest. I want to call my husband. I am sorry, Mrs. Whitman. No outside communication until the doctor clears you. Lisa pushed the pills away. I am not taking them. I have a right to refuse medication. The nurse made a note on her chart. Your refusal to cooperate will be recorded. I will be back in an hour to check on you. She left. The door locked behind her. Lisa sat on the narrow bed, her hand pressed against her belly, alone. She had no phone, no lawyer, no husband, no one who even knew where she was. For the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to cry. Deep, racking sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for herself, for her baby, for the life she had built and the future that was being stolen from her. She cried until she had no tears left. And then, exhausted, she lay down on the uncomfortable bed and stared at the ceiling, waiting for someone to save her. Michael arrived home at noon to find the house empty. At first, he was not alarmed. Lisa often went for walks in the garden or visited with neighbors. But when he called her phone and heard it ringing from the kitchen counter, his concern deepened. He searched the house. The nursery was empty. The bedroom was empty. The garden was empty. Lisa was simply gone. He checked the security footage and felt his blood run cold. 2 police officers, a woman in a gray suit, Lisa being led to a vehicle, her face pale with terror, her hands clenched protectively over her pregnant belly. His phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Mr. Whitman, the message said, this is Dr. Patricia Vance from Adult Protective Services. Your wife has been placed under a 72-hour psychiatric observation hold at Riverside Hospital due to concerns about self-harm and danger to her unborn child. You may contact our office for more information. Michael threw his phone across the room so hard that it shattered against the wall. Then he grabbed his keys and drove 90 miles per hour to Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. I want my wife released, he told the woman at the front desk. Now, the receptionist looked up from her computer with practiced calm. Sir, she has been placed on a medical hold. Only the attending physician can authorize a release. Then get me the attending physician and the hospital administrator. Because if my wife is not in my car within the hour, this hospital will be facing the biggest lawsuit in Virginia history. The receptionist's expression did not change. I will see what I can do, sir. Please have a seat. Michael did not sit. He paced the lobby like a caged animal, calling Derek, calling Margaret, calling everyone he could think of who might be able to help. Derek arrived 45 minutes later with emergency paperwork and a team of legal associates. He marched up to the administrator's office and demanded an immediate meeting. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Derek tore apart the documentation that had been used to justify Lisa's commitment. The report that triggered the hold had no verifiable source. The medical professional who allegedly filed it did not exist. Dr. Vance, it turned out, was not licensed to conduct psychiatric evaluations in the state of Virginia. You detained a pregnant woman based on a fraudulent complaint, Derek told the administrator, his voice cold with fury. You held her against her will without notifying her spouse or allowing her to contact an attorney. You attempted to force medication on her without her consent. These are not procedural errors. These are crime. The administrator's face had gone ashen. There may have been irregularities in the process, he said carefully. Irregularities? Derek leaned forward. You have exposed this hospital to massive liability. My client is prepared to sue for unlawful imprisonment, medical malpractice, and violation of constitutional rights. Unless you release her immediately and provide full documentation of everything that happened here today. The administrator made a phone call, then another. 20 minutes later, Lisa was brought to the lobby in a wheelchair, still wearing hospital scrubs, looking exhausted and terrified. Michael ran to her and pulled her into his arms. I am here, he whispered. It is over. You are safe now. Lisa clung to him, sobbing. She almost won, she said. If you had not come, but I did come, and this is not over. We are going to make sure she pays for every single thing she has done. He helped Lisa into the car and drove her home. She slept the entire way, exhausted beyond words. But Michael was wide awake. His mind was racing, already planning the next move. Eleanor had made her play. She had used her connections to have Lisa imprisoned. She had come within hours of stealing their child. But she had also made a critical mistake. She had left evidence, and Michael was going to use every piece of it. For one beautiful week, it seemed like they were winning. Derek filed official complaints against Dr. Patricia Vance in Riverside Hospital. The fraudulent report was traced back to its source, a retired physician named Harold Mitchell, who had been a friend of Eleanor's for over 30 years. When investigators examined his records, they found a pattern of suspicious diagnoses and questionable commitments stretching back decades. Mitchell lost his medical license. The hospital faced a state investigation. Local news stations picked up the story, running breathless headlines about wealthy families abusing the psychiatric system to silence inconvenient people. Prominent Virginia family, under investigation for false psychiatric commitment, medical license revoked after pattern of fraudulent diagnoses revealed. Pregnant woman held against will, based on fabricated report. Lisa started a blog about psychiatric abuse in custody cases. She wrote about her own experiences, about the terror of being held against her will, about the way the system had been weaponized against her. The post went viral. Within days, it had been shared over 50,000 times. Women from across the country wrote to her, sharing their own stories of being silenced and dismissed and disbelieved. Michael's company stock actually rose as the public rallied behind him. Investors liked the narrative. The dedicated husband protecting his pregnant wife from a cruel and manipulative mother-in-law. For one beautiful week, Lisa smiled again. She laughed. She talked about the future like it was something to look forward to instead of something to fear. Then Eleanor held her press conference. The location was carefully chosen. The steps of the Virginia State Capitol, with its white columns and American flags providing a backdrop of authority and legitimacy. Eleanor stood at the podium looking immaculate in a navy blue dress and her signature pearls. Behind her, arranged like props in a theatrical production, stood 2 state senators and a retired federal judge. "My daughter-in-law is a deeply troubled woman," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with perfectly calibrated emotion. "I have tried to help her. We all have. But she has turned my own son against me with lies and manipulations. These accusations are not the words of a wronged woman. They are the desperate acts of someone who needs help, not headlines." She paused, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Then she produced a folder of documents. "I did not want to do this," she continued. "I believe in protecting family privacy. I believe in giving people the chance to get better without public scrutiny. But when my own grandchild's safety is at stake, I have no choice but to share the truth." She held up a paper. Lisa Whitman, born Lisa Marie Foster, spent 3 years in a juvenile psychiatric facility as a teenager. She has a documented history of manipulation, self-harm, and false accusations against caregivers. The reporters erupted with questions. Cameras flashed like strobe lights. Eleanor raised her hand for silence. "The very accusations she is making against me now, she made against others before. When she was 15 years old, she accused her foster father of abuse. That accusation was investigated thoroughly and found to be completely fabricated. She was committed to Glenwood Youth Psychiatric Center for 3 years, not because she was a victim, but because she was a danger to herself and others." She shook her head sadly. "I love my son, I love my grandchild, and I will do whatever it takes to protect them from a woman who has made a career of manipulating everyone around her." She turned and walked away from the podium without taking questions. The senators and the judge followed, forming a protective wall around her. Within 24 hours, everything had changed. Lisa's blog was flooded with hate comments. "Liars like you make it harder for real victims. You should be ashamed. You belong in a mental institution." Michael's board of directors called an emergency meeting. 3 of Eleanor's allies on the board demanded that he step down as CEO, citing personal distractions affecting company performance. Derek received a letter informing him that 3 of his firm's biggest clients were pulling their business if he continued to represent the Whitmans. "Someone is spending serious money to make sure no one in Virginia will touch your case," he told Michael. And Lisa sat in the dark living room, staring at her laptop, reading the comments that called her a liar and a fraud and a danger to her own child. Michael found her there at midnight. "They found everything," Lisa whispered, not looking up from the screen. "Every hospital record, every diagnosis, every lie that was written about me when I was too young to defend myself." Michael sat beside her. Lisa, whatever they found, it does not change who you are. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were hollow, empty of the hope that had filled them just a week ago. You do not understand. The things they wrote about me back then, they were lies. But they were official lies, on official paper, with official signatures. How do I fight that? How do I prove that I was telling the truth when every piece of documentation says I was lying? Michael took her hands. We fight it with the truth, with our own evidence, with witnesses who can testify to what really happened. There are no witnesses, Lisa said. The doctor who diagnosed me is dead. The foster father who hurt me was never charged. Everyone who could have told the truth stayed silent. She pulled her hands away. Your mother has been planning this for a long time, Michael. She did not just find those records by accident. She has been collecting ammunition, waiting for the right moment to use it. Then we find our own ammunition. Lisa shook her head. There is nothing to find. She has all the power, all the connections, all the credibility, and I have nothing but a psychiatric record that makes me look like exactly what she says I am. Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. Lisa, I need you to tell me everything. Everything that happened at Glenwood. Everything they wrote about you and why. Every single detail, no matter how painful. Lisa closed her eyes. Why? What difference does it make? Because there might be something there. Something we missed. Something that can prove you were telling the truth. Lisa was silent for a long moment. When she opened her eyes, they were filled with tears. I have never told anyone the whole story, she said. Not even you. Tell me now. So she did. She told him about the foster homes, about the Henderson family and the abuse she suffered there, about the night she finally broke down and told a teacher what was happening. She told him about the investigation, about how the authorities had chosen to believe a respected church deacon over a troubled foster kid, about how they had decided she was making it all up for attention. She told him about Glenwood, about the locked doors and the forced medications, and the constant assessments designed to prove that she was sick, about the doctors who refused to believe her, the nurses who treated her like a criminal, the other patients who had given up hope of ever being believed. And she told him about the 2 times she had tried to end it, about standing on the edge of the roof, looking down at the parking lot below, about the razor she had smuggled into her room, the cuts on her wrists, the blood on the bathroom floor. I did not want to die, she said, her voice breaking. I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted someone, anyone, to believe me. Michael pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. When the storm of tears finally passed, Lisa looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Now you know everything, she said. Now you know the real me. The broken, damaged, used-up mess that your mother has been trying to expose. Michael held her face in his hands. I see you, he said. The same you I married. The same you I fell in love with. A survivor, a fighter, someone who went through hell and came out the other side strong enough to help others. He kissed her forehead. Your past does not define you, but we can use it. If we can find anyone from Glenwood, anyone who saw what really happened, anyone who knows the truth, we can build a case. Everyone from that time is gone, Lisa said. The doctors, the staff, the other patients. Maybe not everyone. Michael's mind was racing. You said you were at Glenwood for 3 years. There must have been other people there. Other patients who went through the same thing you did. Lisa was quiet for a moment. There was one girl, she said slowly. Her name was Sarah. She was in the room next to mine. We used to talk through the walls at night. She believed me when no one else would. Do you know what happened to her? Lisa shook her head. I lost track of her after I got out. I was trying so hard to build a new life, I did not want to look back. Then we find her. We find everyone who was at Glenwood during those years. Someone must remember the truth. Lisa looked at him with desperate hope. You really think it is possible? Michael nodded. I think we are just getting started. The catastrophes came in waves, each one crashing over them before they could recover from the last. On Monday, Michael's board of directors held their emergency meeting. He had expected pushback. He had expected difficult questions. He had not expected a vote of no confidence. The motion to remove him as CEO passed with a margin of 2 votes. 3 board members who had been his allies for years suddenly switched sides, voting against him without explanation. Later, Michael would learn that Eleanor had made substantial donations to each of their pet charities in the weeks leading up to the vote. The official statement cited personal distractions affecting company performance. The unofficial reality was that Michael had been outmaneuvered by his own mother. He walked out of the boardroom in a daze. The company he had built from nothing, the empire he had spent 15 years constructing, had been stolen from him in less than an hour. On Wednesday, their bank accounts were frozen. An anonymous tip had been filed with the IRS, alleging potential financial fraud related to Michael's company and personal investments. The allegations were vague enough to justify an investigation, but specific enough to trigger an immediate asset freeze. Suddenly, they could not access their own money. Credit cards were declined at the grocery store. Automatic payments for their mortgage and utilities bounced. The comfortable life they had built began to crumble like sand through their fingers. Derek called with more bad news. "Someone is spending serious money to destroy you," he said. "I have been in this business for 20 years, and I have never seen pressure like this. My partners are threatening to force me out if I continue representing you. My biggest clients are pulling their business. Even my law school was threatening to revoke my alumni privileges." Michael sat in his empty home office, surrounded by boxes of evidence that suddenly had no lawyer to present it. "What do we do now?" Derek was quiet for a long moment. "I am not giving up," he said finally. "But I have to be honest with you, Michael. I am running out of options." On Friday, the final blow landed. A court order arrived by certified mail. Eleanor had filed for emergency custody of the unborn child. The petition cited Lisa's psychiatric history, the frozen bank accounts, Michael's removal from his company, and a sworn statement from a psychiatrist declaring Lisa a potential danger to herself and her baby. The hearing was scheduled for 5 days later. Lisa read the court papers 3 times, as if the words might change if she looked at them often enough. "She is going to take our baby before it is even born," she said, her voice hollow. Michael stared at the document, at the official seal, at his mother's signature at the bottom, elegant and confident. "No, she is not." Lisa looked up at him. "How? We have no money, no lawyer, no one willing to help us. She has taken everything." Michael took her hands. "We still have each other. We still have the truth. And we still have the evidence. Evidence no one will let us present. A truth no one will believe. Then we find someone who will. There is no one. Your mother has made sure of that." Before Michael could respond, the doorbell rang. They both froze. After everything that had happened, an unexpected visitor felt like another threat. Michael walked to the door slowly, prepared for more police officers, more lawyers, more people coming to take something else away from them. Instead, he found a woman he had never seen before. She was in her mid-50s, with expensive but worn clothes and nervous eyes that darted to the street behind her before settling on Michael's face. "Mr. Whitman," she said, "my name is Caroline Ashford. You do not know me, but I know your mother very well." She paused. "I was married to her brother." Michael stared at her. "My mother does not have a brother." Caroline's smile was sad. "She did. His name was William. He died 15 years ago. Officially, it was a heart attack." She looked directly into Michael's eyes. "Unofficially, I have spent the last 15 years trying to prove it was murder. May I come in?" Carolyn Ashford sat in the Whitman living room with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands and told a story that changed everything. "Your father did not die in a car accident," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was revealing. "He was planning to divorce Eleanor. He had discovered that she had been embezzling money from his company for years. Millions of dollars hidden in offshore accounts, siphoned away through fake vendors and shell corporations. He was going to expose her to the authorities and take you with him when he left." Michael felt like he had been punched in the chest. "My father died when I was 8 years old. I barely remember him. That is because Eleanor made sure of it. She erased him from your life. She rewrote the history. She told everyone he was a distant, uninvolved father who died tragically in an accident. But the truth is that he loved you desperately and was trying to save you from her." Carolyn set down her teacup. "Your father died of a heart attack 2 weeks before he was going to file for divorce. The death was ruled natural causes. No autopsy was performed. Eleanor's personal physician signed the death certificate." Michael shook his head. "That does not prove anything. People die of heart attacks all the time." "Yes," Caroline agreed, "they do. But your father was 42 years old, in perfect health, with no family history of cardiac problems. And he died exactly when Eleanor needed him to be, before he could go public with what he had discovered. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder thick with documents. My husband, William, was Eleanor's younger brother. When your father died, William started asking questions. He had never trusted his sister, and the timing of the death seemed too convenient. He started digging into the company finances and found the same irregularities your father had discovered. What happened to him? Lisa asked softly. Carolyn's eyes filled with tears. He died of a heart attack 3 months later. Same doctor signed the death certificate. Same lack of investigation. And suddenly, I was a widow with 2 young children and a mother-in-law who made it very clear what would happen if I ever spoke about my suspicions. She pulled out photographs, medical records, financial documents. I have spent 15 years collecting evidence, following the money, documenting the pattern. But every time I tried to bring it to someone in authority, Eleanor would find out. She would make phone calls, pull strings, and suddenly, the person I had been talking to would stop returning my calls. Or they would tell me the evidence was insufficient. Or they would suggest that I should seek psychological help for my unfounded suspicions. She looked up at Michael and Lisa. Eleanor does not just fight back against people who threaten her. She destroys them completely. She takes their credibility, their reputation, their sanity, and when she's finished, no one believes a word they say. Lisa spoke quietly. She tried to have me committed. I know, Carolyn said. I saw the news stories. That is why I am here. She leaned forward. When I saw what she was doing to you, I recognized the playbook. The psychiatric commitments, the character assassination, the systematic destruction of everything you have built. She did the same thing to me 15 years ago. She had me declared an unfit mother. She took my children away. She destroyed my marriage, my career, my reputation. By the time she was finished, I had nothing left except a folder full of evidence that no one would look at. Michael was trying to process everything he was hearing. If you have evidence of murder, why did you not go to the FBI? The state police? I tried. Every avenue I explored, Eleanor had already closed. She has friends everywhere, judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, people who owe her favors, people she has helped over the years. The entire Virginia legal establishment is riddled with her allies. Then how do we fight her? Carolyn reached into her bag again and pulled out a business card. There is one person she never managed to corrupt, a federal prosecutor named Margaret Sullivan. 20 years ago, Margaret tried to investigate your father's death. She was the only person in the entire system who seemed willing to ask questions. Eleanor destroyed her career for it, got her forced out of the prosecutor's office on fabricated ethics charges, ruined her reputation, made sure she could never practice law again. What happened to her? She retired to a small town in the mountains, spent the last 20 years living quietly, never forgetting what Eleanor did to her. Carolyn held out the business card. I have stayed in touch with her all these years, shared everything I found. She has been waiting for this moment, Michael, waiting for someone to come forward with enough evidence to finally bring Eleanor down. She looked at both of them. You have what I never had, video footage, audio recordings, documentation of a clear pattern of abuse and intimidation. Combined with my evidence about the financial crimes and the suspicious deaths, it might finally be enough. Michael took the business card. The name Margaret Sullivan was printed in simple black letters. You really think she can help us? I think she has been preparing for this fight for 20 years, and I think she would like nothing more than to see Eleanor Whitman in prison. Michael looked at Lisa, at the hope dawning in her eyes, at the way she was sitting up straighter, the despair lifting from her shoulders. He looked at Caroline, at the determination in her face, at the 15 years of pain and loss that had led her to this moment. And he made a decision. Call her, he said. Tell her we have everything she needs. Margaret Sullivan arrived at the Whitman estate the following morning. She was 55 years old, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of fighting losing battles. But her eyes were sharp, alert, filled with a fierce intelligence that had not dimmed despite everything she had endured. She sat at the dining room table and spread out the evidence. Michael's security footage, the recordings of Eleanor's threats, the hospital records from Lisa's false commitment, Carolyn's 15 years of documentation, Financial records, death certificates, sworn statements from witnesses who had been too afraid to come forward until now. For 3 hours, Margaret reviewed everything. She asked questions, made notes, connected dots that no one else had seen. When she finally looked up, her eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. "This is it," she said. "This is what I have been waiting for." "You can build a case?" Michael asked. Margaret nodded slowly. "Federal charges, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, bribery of public officials. And with Caroline's evidence about the deaths, we have enough to justify exhuming the bodies for new forensic testing." "You think she actually killed them?" "I think the timing is too convenient to be coincidence. Both deaths occurred exactly when they would benefit Eleanor. Both were attributed to heart attacks with minimal investigation. And both death certificates were signed by the same doctor, who happened to be Eleanor's personal physician." She stood up and walked to the window. "20 years ago, I tried to investigate your father's death. I was a young prosecutor, idealistic, believing that the system would work if you just followed the evidence. Eleanor taught me otherwise. She turned back to face them. She had me investigated for ethics violations. She leaked fabricated documents to the press. She turned my colleagues against me with whispered suggestions that I was mentally unstable. By the time she was finished, I had no job, no reputation, and no one willing to listen to anything I had to say." Lisa spoke softly. "How did you survive it?" Margaret smiled grimly. "I did not. Not really. I spent 5 years in a very dark place, drinking too much, pushing away everyone who cared about me, wondering if maybe Eleanor was right, if maybe I was crazy for believing I had seen what I had seen." She shook her head. "But I never stopped collecting evidence, never stopped waiting for the right moment. And now, thanks to you, that moment has arrived." Michael looked at the piles of documentation spread across his dining room table. "What happens next?" Margaret sat back down. "First, we take this to the FBI. I still have contacts there, people who were never part of Eleanor's network. They have been waiting for something like this, a case with enough evidence that it cannot be ignored or buried. And the custody hearing?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "The hearing is in 3 days. Normally, I would say we need more time. But if we move fast, we can have Eleanor arrested before she ever sets foot in that courtroom." She looked at Lisa. "You need to understand something. This is going to be the hardest 3 days of your life. Eleanor is not going to go quietly. She is going to fight with everything she has. She is going to try to destroy you before you can destroy her." Lisa met her eyes steadily. "She has already tried to destroy me, multiple times. I am still standing." Margaret nodded with respect. "Then let us finish this." Over the next 48 hours, Margaret worked around the clock. She compiled the evidence into a comprehensive federal complaint. She contacted her former colleagues at the FBI. She briefed prosecutors who had been waiting for years to take on someone like Eleanor Whitman. On the morning of the second night, the FBI agreed to open an official investigation. By that afternoon, agents were interviewing witnesses, subpoenaing bank records, building a case that would bring down not just Eleanor, but the entire network of corrupt officials who had protected her for decades. Eleanor's bank accounts were frozen. 3 of her most loyal allies in the legal community were brought in for questioning. The doctor who had signed the false death certificates was arrested on charges of fraud and evidence tampering. For the first time in their lives, the walls that Eleanor had built around herself began to crumble. On the evening before the custody hearing, Margaret called with news. "It is done," she said. "The FBI has enough for an arrest warrant. They are going to take her into custody tomorrow morning, before the hearing begins." Michael could barely believe what he was hearing. "It is really over?" "Almost. There is still the hearing to get through, but by the time Eleanor arrives at the courthouse, she will be in federal custody. She will not be able to hurt Lisa or your baby ever again." That night, Michael and Lisa sat together in the nursery, looking at the crib they had been preparing for months. "We actually won," Lisa whispered. "After everything she put us through, we actually won." Michael pulled her close. "Not yet, but we will. Tomorrow this ends." Lisa leaned against him, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. "I never thought I would feel safe again. I never thought anyone would believe me. I believe you. I will always believe you. And now the whole world is going to know the truth. They held each other in the darkness, waiting for dawn, waiting for justice, waiting for the end of a nightmare that had consumed their lives for far too long. But Eleanor Whitman had one more card to play. Lisa woke on the morning of the custody hearing to an empty bed. Michael's side was cold, as if he had been gone for hours. On his pillow lay a handwritten note. She picked it up with trembling hands and read the words that shattered her world. Lisa, I am sorry. I cannot let you destroy my family. The hearing will proceed as planned. Do not fight it. Michael. Lisa read the note 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It did not make sense. After everything they had been through, after all the evidence they had gathered, after all the promises he had made, she grabbed her phone and called his number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. She called Margaret. No answer. She called Caroline. Voicemail. She was alone. Again. For one terrible moment, Lisa wanted to give up, to crawl back into bed and disappear, to let Eleanor win because fighting seemed impossible and she was so exhausted. But then her baby kicked. Hard. A reminder that she was not just fighting for herself. Lisa stood up. She washed her face. She put on the most professional outfit her pregnant body would allow, and she drove herself to the courthouse. The Richmond County Courthouse was a grand building with marble columns and polished floors that echoed with every footstep. Lisa had never felt smaller than she did walking through those doors. The courtroom was half full. Reporters in the back rows, eager for another chapter in the scandal that had dominated local news for weeks. Curious spectators hoping to witness the downfall of a wealthy family. And at the defendant's table, Eleanor Whitman, flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than most people's annual salary. Eleanor looked up as Lisa entered. A smile spread across her face, triumphant and cruel. "My dear," she said as Lisa approached, "I told you this would happen. Men always choose their mothers in the end." Lisa did not respond. She took her seat at the opposite table. Alone. No lawyer, no husband, no one. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The hearing began. Eleanor's lead attorney presented the case with practiced ease. He spoke of Lisa's troubled psychiatric history, her documented pattern of false accusations, her unstable mental state. He described the frozen bank accounts, Michael's removal from his company, the chaos that had engulfed the Whitman family since Lisa had entered their lives. And then he presented the most damning evidence of all, a sworn statement from Michael Whitman himself. "My wife has become increasingly erratic in recent months," the statement read. "I fear for the safety of our unborn child. I support my mother's petition for emergency custody." Lisa listened to every word. She did not cry. She did not interrupt. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her heart breaking silently in her chest. When the attorney finished, the judge turned to Lisa. "Mrs. Whitman, do you have representation?" Lisa stood. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. "No, Your Honor. My husband and his mother have taken everything from me. My money, my lawyer, my support system." She paused. "But they cannot take my truth." For the next 30 minutes, Lisa represented herself. She presented the security footage, the recordings of Eleanor's threats, the hospital records from her false commitment, the evidence that Caroline Ashford had gathered over 15 years. Eleanor's lawyers objected to everything: hearsay, illegally obtained, unverifiable, prejudicial. The judge sustained most of the objections. "Mrs. Whitman," the judge said finally, "without proper legal representation and admissible evidence, I am afraid I have no choice but to consider the motion for emergency custody." Lisa felt the last of her hope slipping away. "Your Honor," she said, her voice cracking, "all I am asking is for someone to listen. I am not crazy. I am not dangerous. I am a woman who has been systematically abused and terrorized by her mother-in-law for months. The evidence exists. It is real. Please do not let her take my baby." The judge hesitated. For one long moment, something like sympathy flickered in his eyes. Then the courtroom doors burst open. Michael walked in. Behind him came Margaret Sullivan, Caroline Ashford, 2 FBI agents in dark suits, and Derek Shaw carrying a briefcase full of documents. Your Honor, Michael said, his voice ringing through the silent courtroom. I apologize for the interruption, but I have evidence that fundamentally changes these proceedings. Eleanor shot to her feet. Michael, what are you doing? Michael walked past her without a glance. Mother, sit down. The room fell completely silent. Michael approached the bench with a folder. 3 days ago, my mother attempted to bribe me. She offered me full control of the family trust, $47 million, if I would testify against my wife and support her custody claim. He held up his phone. I recorded the conversation. The judge leaned forward. Play it. Michael pressed a button, and Eleanor's voice filled the courtroom. Michael, darling, think about what you are doing. That woman is nothing. She came from nothing. Your father would be ashamed. Sign the papers. Testify that she is unfit. And all of this goes away. The money, the company, everything you have lost. I will give it all back. And if I refuse, then you will lose everything. And when that baby is born, I will make sure you never see it. I have done it before. Ask your Aunt Carolyn. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael looked at Lisa. He mouthed 2 words, I am sorry. Then he turned back to the judge. The note my wife found this morning was part of our plan. We needed my mother to believe she had won. We needed her to become overconfident enough to make one final mistake. He gestured to the FBI agents. These agents have been investigating my mother for the past 3 days. They have evidence of fraud, embezzlement, witness tampering, and bribery of public officials. They also have forensic evidence linking her to 2 suspicious deaths, including my father's. Eleanor's face had gone ashen. Michael, this is insane. You cannot possibly believe. Michael turned to face her. For the first time in his life, he looked at his mother without any trace of love or loyalty. I believe the evidence. I believe the witnesses. I believe the woman I married, who you tried to destroy because she threatened your control over this family. He shook his head. The game is over, Mother. You lose. The FBI agent stepped forward. Eleanor Whitman, the lead agent, said, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering, bribery of public officials, and suspicion of involvement in 2 homicides. Eleanor screamed, this is ridiculous. Do you know who I am? I am Eleanor Whitman. The agent looked at her calmly. Yes, ma'am, that is exactly why we are here. They placed handcuffs on her wrists. The click of the metal echoed through the silent courtroom like a gunshot. As they led her toward the door, Eleanor passed Lisa's table. She stopped, her face twisted with hatred. You think you have won? She hissed. I made this family. Without me, you are nothing. Lisa stood, 8 months pregnant, exhausted, battered by months of attacks, but unbroken. You are wrong, Eleanor. You did not make this family. You tried to destroy it, and you failed. She leaned closer. Enjoy prison. I hear the beds are not very comfortable. Michael appeared at Lisa's side. Was that a threat? Did my sweet, gentle wife just threaten my mother? Lisa smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. I prefer promise. Michael shook his head. I really should have married you sooner. You really should have. The trial of Eleanor Whitman lasted 6 months. It was the biggest legal event in Virginia history, drawing national media attention and dominating news cycles for weeks at a time. Every day, the courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators, eager to witness the downfall of a woman who had seemed untouchable for so long. The prosecution presented a devastating case. Financial forensics revealed decades of embezzlement totaling over $30 million. Witness after witness testified to Eleanor's pattern of intimidation and manipulation. And most damning of all, the bodies of Michael's father and Caroline's husband had been exhumed. The autopsies revealed traces of oleandrin, a rare cardiac glycoside derived from the oleander plant. The poison mimicked the symptoms of a natural heart attack and was nearly undetectable without specific testing. Eleanor Whitman was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Throughout the trial, she maintained her innocence. She claimed the financial irregularities were accounting errors. She insisted the deaths were coincidental. She portrayed herself as a victim of a vast conspiracy orchestrated by a mentally unstable daughter-in-law and a vengeful ex-sister-in-law. But the evidence was overwhelming. On a gray November morning, the jury returned its verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Eleanor Whitman to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, her perfectly styled hair beginning to show gray roots, her designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit. For the first time in her life, she had no control over her fate. Michael watched from the gallery, Lisa's hand gripped tightly in his. He had not spoken to his mother since the day of her arrest, and he had no intention of ever speaking to her again. Some relationships were too damaged to repair, some wounds cut too deep to heal. The woman who had raised him was not the woman he had believed her to be. The mother he had loved and trusted had been a monster hiding behind a mask of respectability. But from the ashes of that relationship, something new had grown. 3 months before the verdict, Lisa had given birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Emma. She had Michael's dark hair and Lisa's gentle smile, and she was, by all accounts, the most perfect baby ever born. The birth had been difficult. Lisa had gone into labor 2 weeks early, her body exhausted by months of stress. But she had fought through every contraction, every moment of pain, with the same determination that had carried her through everything else. And when Emma finally arrived, screaming and perfect and very much alive, Lisa had held her close and whispered the words she had been waiting her whole life to say. You are safe, you are loved, and no one will ever hurt you. They sold the Whitman estate. Too many bad memories haunted those rooms, those hallways, those perfectly manicured gardens. Instead, they bought a modest house outside Richmond. Not a mansion, just a home, the kind of place where a child could grow up without shadows. Michael stepped down from the company he had founded. The board had offered him his position back after Eleanor's arrest, but he had declined. He had spent 15 years building a business empire, and it had nearly cost him everything that mattered. Now he wanted something different. He wanted to be present, to be the kind of father his own dad had tried to be before Eleanor had taken that possibility away. Lisa returned to nursing, working part-time at a community clinic that served foster children and at-risk families. She also wrote. Her blog had grown into something larger, a platform for women who had survived abuse and manipulation, who had been silenced by powerful people and dismissed by systems that should have protected them. She told her story, all of it, the foster homes, the abuse, the years at Glenwood, the false accusations that had followed her for decades. And she told the stories of others, women who had reached out to her after her own ordeal became public, women who had never had anyone believe them until now. Caroline Ashford became the executive director of the Whitman Family Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping abuse survivors navigate the legal system. Margaret Sullivan served on the board, using her legal expertise to train advocates and educate communities. Derek Shaw handled pro bono cases, representing women who could never have afforded his services. The trauma had become a mission. The pain had become a purpose. In its first year, the foundation helped over 800 women. 1 year after Emma's birth, the Whitman family hosted a small celebration in their backyard. Nothing extravagant. Just friends and family gathered on a sunny afternoon to celebrate the little girl who had brought so much joy into their lives. Carolyn was there with her 2 adult children, who had reconnected with her after Eleanor's conviction. Margaret sat on the porch with Derek, arguing good-naturedly about legal precedents. Lisa's nursing school friends helped set up the birthday cake while Michael attempted to grill burgers and failed spectacularly. Emma sat on a blanket in the grass, giggling at everything and nothing, completely unaware of the darkness that had surrounded her birth. The doorbell rang. Michael wiped his hands on his apron and walked through the house to answer it. A delivery driver stood on the porch, holding a certified letter. Sign here, please. Michael signed and took the envelope. The return address was a federal prison in West Virginia. He stood in the foyer for a long moment, staring at his mother's handwriting. Then he opened the letter. Dear Michael, I know you will never forgive me. I do not ask for forgiveness. But there is something you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago. Your father did not die in a car accident. He was leaving me, taking you with him. I could not allow that, but that is not the secret. The secret is that Lisa is not a stranger I targeted. I have known about her for years. Your father, he had another family, a daughter he had before he met me, a daughter he was forced to give up for adoption. That daughter grew up in foster care because I made sure she would. Lisa is your half-sister. Check the DNA if you do not believe me. I have enclosed the original birth certificate. Some truths are worse than lies. Mother Michael stared at the letter, at the birth certificate folded behind it, at the names written there. His hands began to shake. From the backyard, he could hear Lisa laughing, Emma squealing, the sounds of joy and celebration and everything he had fought to protect. He looked at the papers in his hands, then at the window where he could see his wife holding their daughter. For one terrible moment, he considered the possibility that Eleanor was telling the truth, that Lisa was his half-sister, that their marriage, their child, everything they had built was founded on a secret that would destroy them both. Then he thought about who had sent this letter, a convicted murderer, a woman who had spent her entire life manipulating everyone around her, a mother who had tried to have her own daughter-in-law committed and had stolen custody of her grandchild. Eleanor had spent 60 years controlling narratives, deciding who belonged and who did not, who deserved love and who deserved pain. This was her last attempt at control, her final manipulation from behind bars. One more lie designed to destroy the family she could no longer possess. Michael walked to the fireplace. He held the letter over the flames, watching the paper curl and blacken. The birth certificate followed, then the envelope. He watched until everything had turned to ash. Then he walked back outside to his family. Lisa looked up as he approached. Everything okay? Michael looked at her, at the woman who had survived impossible things, who had fought through unimaginable pain, who had built a life from nothing and then rebuilt it again when everything was taken away. Just junk mail, he said. He picked up Emma, kissed Lisa's forehead, and rejoined the celebration. Some secrets died with the people who created them. Some truths were not worth knowing, and some families were not built by blood or DNA or legacy. They were built by choice, by commitment, by showing up every single day and choosing each other over and over again. Michael had made his choice a long time ago. He chose Lisa. He chose Emma. He chose the family they had built together. Everything else was just noise. The party continued into the evening. Friends laughed. Children played. Emma fell asleep in her mother's arms as the sun set over the Virginia hills. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Emma was tucked into her crib, Michael and Lisa sat together on the porch swing. Lisa leaned against his shoulder. "I have been thinking," she said. "About what?" "About everything we went through, everything your mother did. And I realized something." "What is that?" "She did not break us. She tried everything. The abuse, the manipulation, the lies, the legal attacks, all of it. And we are still here, still together, still standing." Michael pulled her closer. "That is because she underestimated you. She thought you were weak because you came from nothing. She did not understand that coming from nothing makes you stronger than anyone who has never had to fight for anything." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not checked the cameras that day?" Michael thought about it. "I try not to, but I think about how close we came, how easily things could have gone differently. She almost won. Almost, but she did not, and she never will." Lisa looked up at him. "Thank you for believing me, for fighting for me, for not giving up when everything seemed impossible." Michael kissed her forehead. "I would do it all again, 1,000 times, because you are worth it. You and Emma, you are everything." They sat together in the darkness, listening to the crickets and watching the stars appear one by one. The past year had been the hardest of their lives, but it had also shown them what they were made of, what they were capable of when they stood together against impossible odds. Eleanor Whitman had tried to destroy them. Instead, she had made them stronger. And now she would spend the rest of her life in a prison cell while they built the future she had tried so hard to prevent. Some battles happened inside the home. Some enemies wore familiar faces. Some wounds never fully healed. But some victories were worth every scar. Michael and Lisa had won theirs, and they intended to enjoy every single day of the life they had earned, together, forever. And that is how a foster kid who had nothing became the woman who brought down one of Virginia's most powerful families. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, I need you to do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Because every week I bring you stories just like this one. Stories about survival, Stories about justice. Stories about ordinary people who refuse to give up when the world tries to break them. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Did you see that final twist coming? What would you have done if you were Michael? I read every single comment, and I love hearing from you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story today, someone who is fighting their own battle, someone who feels alone, share this video with them. Sometimes a story is exactly what we need to remember, that we are stronger than we think. Thank you for staying until the end. I will see you in the next one.